Hey, what is up, nation? In this session, we're going to be critiquing a portfolio that Kevin Ho is using to apply to a Masters of Architecture program. Okay, so I just want to start this off by saying whenever you're doing a portfolio, especially if it's for to get into a specific program, that you should really understand who your audience is. I'm not the particular audience here, so I'm going to be basing it on my own personal opinion and aesthetics, but a particular university in this case or firm may be looking for specific things. So I'm just going to be talking about aesthetically what I think is correct throughout this, so just beware of that. Okay, so my first impression from looking at this is that there's a little bit of technical knowledge, but that's sort of like lacking in just my first impression. The rendering skills are sort of there, but they seem fairly basic. I really like this diagram here. I think it's captivating, although just overall everything seems kind of washed out. It seems very desaturated. Like I would love it if this was like bolder, the blacks were bolder, and if this stuff sort of fades away, at least you're reading something. Right now, it's hard for me to really focus on any one thing. I do like the fact that there is a grid organization to this, that you can sort of break things up into squares. But the one thing that I will notice, or will note, is that the width of these is actually not the same. So this is like pretty thin. This looks like it's offset a little bit. And not that it makes a big difference if you're looking at this really quickly, if you know the architecture board is, or whoever's reviewing these portfolios isn't going to look at it that quickly, but just subconsciously, or they're only going to look at it very quickly, but really subconsciously, they may notice these types of things, or it may affect how they view this. So that's my opinion on this. These little lines here, I don't think are adding anything. If anything, it's subtracting from what you're doing. So I would get rid of, it looks like there might be a cloud or something here. It looks like a smudge, on the computer at least. Obviously, and I wanted to say this at the beginning, is if you're going to review something, however you're submitting it to whoever you're applying for. So like if you're applying to a firm and you're submitting your portfolio digitally, that's how you want it to be reviewed, because people are going to look at this on different types of monitors that have different color, different resolutions, different color properties and things like that. So if you're sending this digitally, this is an accurate critique in that regard. So let's go to the second page. Okay, so what happens with this, and I like, it's neat, these little like page opening things. I've seen them before, but so I've never used whatever particular one this is. So intuitively I want a mouse to scroll in, and that seems to be how you do that. Older people may not know how to do that, and this can be a distraction. So it is what it is. I like it. I like the fact that you can zoom in, and you can essentially pan. So that's good there. Unfortunately, I can't pan when I'm zoomed out. Huge blocks of texts. Nobody's really going to read them, probably. For an application, maybe for this, they'll be looking at them, the actual text, because it's an academic program you're applying to. But for like a job, nobody's going to read this stuff, or maybe they'll read the first one and they're not going to really bother with the rest because they want to see your work. They want to get like a quick idea if you are the candidate. So that is what it is. So some plans here. It looks like you got some north arrows. That's good. It doesn't have a scale. I'm not going to scale off of this anyway. What I do see, okay, you do have a section marker, just really basic things. These little diagrams I really like, but again, I just wish that these were maybe a little bit brighter, because some of this stuff, like this red here, starts to fade away a little bit. These arrows, I can see that they're arrows, but they don't have very pronounced, like these are very pronounced. I can tell, yes, this is an arrow. This one, I could think that's a person actually. So a stylized person. I just think about that kind of stuff. As a presentation, this seems to work. I'm not like super like this is amazing. It looks like this may have been done in SketchUp or something with some maybe it was rendered, or maybe you threw in, looks like maybe some Photoshop work. Maybe it was like SketchUp or some sort of base render that you then threw Photoshop on top of. What I like to see is just an understanding of like space and things like that. So that you have some sections here. Interesting. So this is like a pool, and you would have, your bond beam, but I don't see anything here. Is this a foundation for the steps? I don't understand what that is. And that's like the kind of thing that I would look for. Like this has a foundation, these don't. Maybe they're shallow pools. Yeah. But I want to be able to look at the plan here. So if you have like numbers or something that can tell me what is going on here, it's really hard for me to critique what's going on. Because I don't have any information to really like say, okay, this intention makes sense, so I have to judge it based on the aesthetics. And I don't understand what these lines mean and things like that. Like, what's this dashed line? Maybe, is there a building above? Okay, yeah, yeah. Just like little things like that. Just a key that tells me what the spaces are would be helpful. Okay, so we have an advertisement. So I don't know if this is how you would be sending this to potential employers or the review board, but if there's an advertisement on your portfolio, I'm not continuing. I would have exited out right then and just closed this out. So just, I don't know if you can pay to not have that or what, but yeah. What I would say here is that the focus, like, I think this is actually really beautiful, the way that this section was done, and it shows some understanding of what's going on in section, but this image in the back is really competing for attention because it's a nice image, and so what I would do with this is I would just really like turn the opacity on that, or make it more opaque, make it more translucent, less opaque, more translucent, just to make that fade away and really make your section shine. I like your little scale figures. They seem to work. It is hard to read what's going on in the actual spaces. That may just be because of what I'm doing or like the way that I'm looking at it. But yeah. Badminton courts, but you have some guys playing volleyball. So, I mean, I guess they have the same net, but I don't know. I might call it something different if you're not showing those. The birds, I don't think add anything to this. Like there is sort of a little bit of a balance issue because you have this big mass here, but I don't. They're right now for me. They're a distraction. Here in this guy, I think you could really change the color of this. So you have like a really bright green tennis court, and then the green for your grass is very different. And so what my eye is drawn to is actually like these greens, which are way more saturated than these other colors. And then also the red, all the people. And I think in architecture, people often get forgotten. But in this, the people aren't really adding much to this. So I think there's sort of a balance here. And just because of the way that this is done, I can't tell whether this is like, I think this is up top. Yeah, I think this is up top. But because of this outline here, this makes it kind of look like this is like down below. But I think you just outline the building here. So just be careful with that kind of stuff, that since you put this in section, it shows up. But I guess because it's not a part of your building, but I don't understand that. Maybe since this is at the same level, this isn't there. That line you could go away or something. It's just a little distracting. Like, it's a style option that you chose to go with. So yeah, you just have to make sure that your style doesn't start making I don't know, informing people the wrong way. It's just something to be aware of. And I would say, like, I like the desaturated look here in the back. Maybe you do that here, and that maybe that makes sense to do that, and that would help this fade away a little bit. But in terms of saturation, I would just saturate this a lot more. Bring in this sort of like green, like make sure your colors are coordinating between the sections, because I think that this actually looks pretty saturated, and then this doesn't. So just work with it. And then from a just compositional standpoint, this works, but it just seems a little bit unbalanced. Not that everything has to be like 100% completely balanced, but this side is very heavy, and this side doesn't feel as heavy. So, yeah, this model is fine. I don't know anybody who builds physical models anymore, but it's nice to be able to see that, to get a feeling for the space. Yeah. Here, I really love the saturation of these. It really helps draw my eye around. At least I go from here to here. It would be nice if there was a little bit of saturation within your building. It is architecture, so I understand everybody loves white. But I love the way these sections read. The people, I think, are a little bit distracting. Again, I just think they're distracting. I'm not able to really focus on what your building is. So that's just an architecture critique. But what I will say is that back here, this starts to become really distracting, because there's like this organic thing behind, but then there's a sharp stop in what's going on. The same thing up here is just your building starts to get lost. Like this section, I can sort of start to understand. Unfortunately, I don't know what it is about this water here. Looks like it sort of goes back a little bit. It looks very oceany, I think, to me, and I don't know why that is. But like this section here, I think, like, I really like, 'cause it's simple. I don't like the background, but I can start to understand what's going on in this space, like as a spatial thing. But it's not really like that interesting of a section in and of itself, just because like there's nothing really, like there's a pool. People are looking outside. There's an outdoor pool. Okay. There's a glass thing here. I'm like, okay, like I understand the space, but it's not like that interesting per se. Or like this, where there's like level changes and things, really interesting. And then you have this detail section over here, but unfortunately, like it just kind of like gets lost, because there's these highly saturated things over here, and then the only thing that really has these things have a little bit of saturation. And as a diagram, like a standalone diagram, I think this is nice, but it's just hard for it to compete against these things on the same page. Like I just don't really want to spend a whole lot of time looking at this, because it just doesn't seem that interesting. And a detail could be really interesting to look at. If this sort of style here was brought into this, I think it could be really interesting to see like the life of the grass and things like that. And then this again, this starts to be really cool. It kind of reminds me of Jurassic Park, but like this girl in the front is just sort of distracting to me, because she's like, that's what I focus on, is this little girl in the front who looks like she just did a handstand or something. Just a little bit of a distraction. I think just like overall, like having some people in the water would be fine, but like these people in the foreground are just a little distracting for me personally. So let's move on to the next one. Again, we have this exploded axonometric, which I really like. And I like the colors here. I think they're really working. And then you get over to here and there's just doesn't seem to be enough saturation. I think that seems to be a theme going through this. I like that you sort of like break things up, and there's these little like 3D things. But yeah, just as a general tip, I think the saturation could be brighter, or could be more, because some of these seem kind of dull. And that's actually, that was the last page, I think. Oh no, that wasn't the last page. So like this, just seems a little too dark. I think this might seem okay, but I think the rest of this stuff, if you could just lighten it up, I can hardly read any of these. Not that it matters per se. But I think because you chose to go with a white building, it just makes it a little bit hard to read the sections. But yeah, that's fine. Cool little model here. The same thing with this. I think the colors could be a little bit brighter. Maybe that's my own personal taste. I do like the space under here, but I think the way that the sun is facing makes this less appealing, because this is all in shadow. And I know that it probably would be in shadow, but if there was just light coming in from the backside, and I don't know which way the sun is oriented, but just making this more dynamic, because right now this seems like it's going to be in shade all of the time. And another thing, maybe this is kind of weird, whatever the building is doing. Just having this stuff out here be just massing, I think could help too. Like whatever, just making it clear what is your project and what isn't. This seems like a lot of information. It's cool to have these kind of like little diagrams, cross ventilation, stack ventilation, just illustrating that you understand what these things are. I think is good to have in a portfolio. Maybe if they were just on the one side, just having all of this like information on one page just seems a little overwhelming. The people here, again, I think if you mess with light a little bit, just be cautious of how the light is coming in. This, for some reason, it looks like there's like a gas attack going on in here. Looks like these are spewing some sort of chemical. I don't. It's just like maybe there's some effect you put on, but yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. These plans, it's really hard to even read what's going on, and to be honest, I went through all of architecture school without really even doing a plan, because people don't really care about them. They care about the fancy renderings. But it would be nice just like at one point in this to be able to see a detailed plan. So we'll see if that ever happens. This I like. I think maybe this could actually be less saturated, the brown, because I look at that. My attention is sort of competing between the blue and the brown, instead of focusing on the architecture. So even if the architecture here was darker, I think that would be better. But I think the people here are way better, because I'm not focusing on them as much. With the white people with the red outline, I think is too distracting for me personally. It's cool to see the framing here, to see that you're thinking about the different structural components. This is very different, and it's cool to see that, this sort of like parametric fabrication. Love to see this kind of stuff. I would say that this stuff looks really muddy. I don't know what you use to generate that, but like this stuff over here is okay, but I would see if you could find some different lines. If you can find like the, what's it called? And like the vector files for these, because these lines just look so chunky. There's just another advertisement. This is okay, I think. I think actually with the other ones, they were not saturated enough. These, I think maybe too, like I like these buildings, these stacks up here. but the bottom down here with the trees are really saturated, and so like my eye starts to look at these, and I know these aren't important, but I can't help my eyes keep wanting to look at them, especially like this tree right here. I don't know what it is about that tree. It's cool. I see some grids. That's a very important thing to have in architecture, that a lot of people don't start with, but actually in all my projects I start with grids. This pink could probably be a little bit different. What you don't want is for something to be more prominent if it doesn't need to be. So right now, the only thing with color on this page is this. And so that's where my focus is. I look at this because it's just more interesting than these like little plants. But because there's no color in any of these, I have to be forced to look at, like I have to force myself to look at these. And they could, they show a little bit of information about like that you understand structure and things like that, which I think is important to highlight. So doing something like adding color or renderings or some sort of rendering method to your detail sections, I think could be a great benefit in showing that you really understand what you're doing, and that you can also render. And that looks like that's it. I think overall, I think this is a great portfolio. I probably came down pretty hard on it, but I think it shows a good breadth of knowledge, at least of architectural ability. I don't know if you've had any sort of training in, I don't know if you have a Bachelor of Architecture or not, Kevin, but this looks like you do. And so I think it shows that. I would say just a couple things overarchingly. Just you have to be wary of the balance of the page. When someone like me is looking at something like this, our eye is going to be drawn to whatever is the focus of the piece. So if there's areas that are important to you, make sure that they're not being competed with other portions. Like the coolest thing on this page, I think, is probably this. And I did see it on the cover. And so I think you're proud of this. But I'm going to look at this and then move on to these other colored things and maybe not notice this as much. So just like think about that kind of stuff. Think about you want to add people in. Just think about where everyone's attention is going to go when you add something with a red outline. And aesthetically, it may look cool, but always be thinking about the information that you're trying to convey, because it can be very busy. And it's easy to happen in architecture because there's so much going on that you do one thing and it just becomes very chaotic in general. Be careful about the kind of images that you use in the background. Sometimes they were okay. Like in this, I think this is great because it becomes a background. But in other ones like this, it's probably a little too much. It's too busy. So hopefully this helped. Good luck getting into your program. And as always, happy hacking.